Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Krishna. Welcome back, everyone, no one. I'm back in USA. I think our last time together, I was in Taipei, Taiwan. Been in America a couple weeks now. Finally ready to get back into the good stuff. It is Nrsimha Chaturdasi. I hope I said that right. I use the plain English all the time, like Nrsimhadev's appearance day. I categorize it like that to myself a lot of the time instead of the Sanskrit words. Not always. So I fasted all day today because it's Boston time zone. The dusk here is like 8 p.m., 7 p.m. now. So this is super awesome. So much Shakti now. And it's a big test. See if how not excited I can be for the big meal I'm going to have as soon as I'm done with this. Of course, I have to prepare that meal as well, which I have not done, and that I probably won't eat till 8:30 or 9, maybe, even though I'm ready to just break the fast right now. Today we are starting chapter 12, which I believe is called Devotional Service. Yes. We're doing verses 1 through 4. Literal translation by H.D. Goswami first, and after that, the perfect translation by Srila Prabhupada. You may join me or not while I glorify and invoke the Supreme. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I do like to do that first mantra 3 times, but I already did it 3 times. That means it's 4 times. It means I have to do it one more time. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Even 5. But first, I just have it in my phone. Just showing off my new phone for a second there. One benefit of being back in the US. Many things are not a benefit. I have it in my Kindle app here. More and more ads as every day goes on forward. Chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. Arjuna said, "The devotees thus worship you, always linked, while others worship the unperishing invisible. Which of these know yoga best?" The Lord said, "Those who worship me with transcendent faith, ever linked, fixing their mind in me, I regard as most linked in yoga. But those who worship the unperishing, ineffable, invisible, that exists everywhere, inconceivable, unchanging, unmoving, and fixed, who control the set of senses, judging fairly everywhere, intent on every being's good, they achieve me alone." Reading this the second time now, today, what jumped out at me is the word invisible, which is capitalized, and yoga is italicized, which I am, of course, assuming is significant. So I'm going to compare that real quick with the literal translation by Srila Prabhupada now, see what's going on here, if we can find out what's going on. My guess, invisible refers to like Paramatma or Krishna that is invisible with everything. And that's why it's capitalized, because it's God. We're talking about God. So far, I'm not saying the word invisible. Okay. Distracted by my dog here. um, unmanifested, inconceivable, achintyam. Yeah. Aksharam, beyond the perception of the senses. Well, that's not really invisible. Visible just means for vision only, not all the senses. Maybe in English it does, colloquially today, but that's not really what it means. We should use a better word if that's what we mean. Yeah, but I think that's the word H.D. Goswami is translating, because here it is in verse 1, aksharam, beyond the senses. And that could be why it's capitalized, because I would rather italicize it. But anyway, invisible could be a placeholder in English for this Sanskrit word, which means beyond everything. Not just invisible, but beyond all senses. And also that could indicate it as a chief word. Among similar synonyms, ineffable, inconceivable, whatever, invisible, H.D. Goswami could be indicating this is like the chief word of those words, which does make sense for what these verses mean. That could indicate the primary significance of personalism versus impersonalism. It definitely feels right, especially to me, to someone with my conditioning. It's very plain to see, pun intended. But that's all. For H.D. Goswami's translation, that's it. We'll just move on, and then I'll tie it back in as it comes up. Now let's do verse 1, colloquial translation by Srila Prabhupada. Arjuna inquired, which is considered to be more perfect, those who are properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? I also noticed a new thing just now. There are 2 colons here. Arjuna inquired, colon, and then which is considered to be more perfect, colon. That may be, the first colon is fine. The second one, I'm wondering if I think it's grammatically correct. But even if it's not, it's the point I want to make now is that it's uncommon. For most English books you'll read today, the punctuation is minimized wherever possible. But for Srila Prabhupada and myself, and most people, I want to say most people who are mostly just reading classical literature, scriptures, and even more especially Eastern scriptures and classics that are being translated into English, these additional punctuations that Prabhupada is adding in is not an artistic thing. It's not a poetic thing. I think it's an educational tool. I think he's giving us some really important kind of training wheels, if you might want to call it, or something that will directly help us read it with the correct rhythm so that we can have the correct understanding. Because Sanskrit grammar is a lot different than English grammar. And by grammar, I mean syntax. That's really just, the grammar is obviously different, but the syntax is the main thing that's different. And that's why, for example, if you ever meet a Japanese or Korean person who's still learning English, they will say utter nonsense sometimes because the subject and the verb are just very different place in the sentence. So they can say even a simple sentence and you genuinely don't know what they're talking about because it's a syntax error. And Sanskrit is similar. The syntax is a lot different than what we're used to. And so Prabhupada organized it here so that the translation is intact, but also the rhythm is intact, so that the same way that Arjuna is talking to Krishna in his native tongue, we're getting a hint of that here. Now, obviously, we're not getting it one-to-one translation because that's basically impossible. If you were to do a purely literal translation with no punctuation, with no modern English anything, it would be gibberish. It would not be intelligible. We would not have any chance to understand it, which is what happens when you read the literal translation. It's sometimes understandable, sometimes not, sometimes beautiful, sometimes gibberish. Sometimes you can't make sense of the whole context out of it. That's why, again, Prabhupada has included all of these translations. Of course, he also comes from that tradition where his master was doing that and his master before him was doing that for centuries, which is also amazing in a different sense. I think this verse is much more clear than the H.D. Goswami's translation, especially because Prabhupada uses this word impersonal, which is in the purport. That's the whole point of this long purport now, is to really drill in that personal and impersonal are significant theological concepts. Is too subtle a word. It's stronger than that. Also, the word Brahman is nowhere else. Almost nowhere else that I can see in this. In the Sanskrit, it's not here. And then in the purport, it's there. Now, but it's also a hint. So Prabhupada is always doing these, I don't know, there must be a special word for this. The first thing I think of is like an inside joke, but it's just a reference to other Vedic literatures, like the Upanishads, Brahman with the capital B. That's the main thing throughout the entire Upanishads. And even in the Gita, Prabhupada will also talk about the Brahma Jyoti, which I think is capitalized, but it's from that same root word, Brahman. And he's deliberately bringing that back into this verse here. Again, great idea. I mean, it's a perfect time now to not only juxtapose personal versus impersonal, but Brahman versus Krishna. So, and especially when you see the capital B in Brahman and the capital A and T in absolute truth and Krishna, we're getting a much clearer picture of how these are quite distinct. A lot of these things can be quite distinct from each other, which when you're reading and studying is very important. I think when we're practicing yoga of any kind, it should be less important. The severe ritualism leads to a downfall for many. What I mean is, when I practice something for God, unless it's a part of the practice that it's a very particular form or whatever, I just focus on the basic part. Okay, I'm just doing this for God. And the more important thing is just like, okay, stay away Maya, stay away distractions. But you focus on the main thing, which is just like bhakti or God or Krishna, or, just keep that principle like really, really honed in, base layer all the time. And then if you make some mistake with the details, like, it's okay. Just like, as long as you stay in the loop, you stay in the thread, it's okay. You live to fight another day. And then the next time, maybe you'll do better. You have a bit more of the details of that ritual you can properly bring into it. Like in kirtan, like if you're playing kartals, the main thing is to keep the beat. You just have to keep the same beat as everyone else. If you want to do a fancy fill-in or you want to do a double time thing, that's great. But if you can't, do not try to do that and go out of beat and fail. That's worse. It's not always. When you're practicing, you got to practice. You got to make mistakes to do better. But if you're in a temple kirtan with tons of people and you're that one guy who's off beat, you destroy it for everyone. Really good analogy. Glad that came to my head. So proud of myself. It's not even myself, of course. It's just manas. It's just the mind just like gets things like shot into it. It was literally not me at all. So I put some notes in here for verse 1, and it is a bit of a long purport, but most of it. Here's Brahma Jyoti. It's italicized but not capitalized. That's interesting. But it's right in the bottom of the page. I noticed something. What was? Yes. Prabhupada says he, Arjuna, wants to know whether his position is secure. That's the main part here. Arjuna is a personalist, and he just had the supreme impersonalist experience that these impersonalists would probably be, I could be wrong, but I think it's literally the supreme experience an impersonalist could be looking for. But I could be wrong in that it wasn't totally impersonalist. Like Arjuna in the universal form, it's not just like random teeth and eyes and like Arjuna knows that it's Krishna that's killing all the people on the battlefield and all the blood and whatever. Like he knows there is a person within this impersonal form, and maybe a true impersonalist, it's more supreme. I'm thinking especially now of like a Zen Buddhist. If there should be much more nothingness, much less personal features for their version of the supreme impersonalist experience. Also Taoism, to really experience the Tao, the Brahma Jyoti, whatever you want to call it in another term, perhaps there should not be any personal form for that person who wants that experience. I disagree. So be it. Yep, good enough. Only one more note on verse 4. Also, quick worthy note, I think, for a nerd scholar like me who is occasionally writing works like this, not at this level, but composition I'm always thinking about, right? So H.D. Goswami had verse 3 and 4 separated. Srila Prabhupada has it conjoined. Verse 3 and 4 are clustered together, and that makes perfect sense. Like when you read the literal translation by HDG, you just feel like that's why I stopped this stream at verse 4. Verse 5 is like an addition, but it's really like one is the setup, 2 is like, okay, here's basically the answer, and then 3 and 4 together is like the definitive tie-in that secures this verse cluster and as one composed idea. I guess idea isn't the right word, but whatever. Good job, Prabhupada, is I guess what I'm saying. I'd like to say more, but once again, I'm keeping the principle in mind always, and then the details, if I mess up, please forgive me. As long as I keep going, I get a chance to do better next time. So I keep going. How many other devotees have live streamed the entire Bhagavad Gita? I'm not there yet. I've still got 6 more chapters, but it will happen for sure. Here is verse 2. The blessed Lord said, "He whose mind is fixed on my personal form, always engaged in worshiping me with great and transcendental faith, is considered by me to be most perfect." Love that phrase, most perfect. It's like, it's redundant, right? So like if I was teaching like a high school, middle school English class, I would mark it as a mistake quote. It's not grammatically wrong, But as like a writing teacher, I might say, in a mundane topic, I might say, oh no, you can just say perfect, don't say most perfect. But in a religious text, when we're talking about God, this is very correct. God is better than most perfect. He is better than the most perfect. He is the most perfect of the most perfect. These sort of redundancies are correct. They're not an accident. It's not a glitch. It's a design in the system which is there on purpose. It's correct poetics for this context. And it's also just, what's the right word? It's lovely. It's just kind of like sweet in some personal sense, I guess. Just like, I wanted to say cute, and I didn't want to offend anyone. Didn't want to offend Prabhupada or anyone else, but cute in a good sense. There's innocence there. Like when a child first learns the word perfect and he already knows the word better or very, then he'll say, oh, it is very perfect. And that child, he really believes he beat the system, that he really, with the good intention, thought, I did something really good. I made it even better. I think that's really sweet, and it's really positive, and it's really good. And I think it's a similar thing to what Srila Prabhupada and apostles who wrote the Gospels, like every, great saint and sage who's using this poetic device, I think there's a real sweetness to it, which I often enjoy. I'm not myself good at authoring with this language. I'm actually not good at that. But as a reader, as a consumer of this work, I love it. I sometimes I really love it. Most of the time I like it. Maybe sometimes I don't like it. Sometimes it goes over the top for whatever mood I'm in, I guess. But so be it. In the end of the short purport, and in the end, Prabhupada stresses that a pure devotee is constantly engaged, and it can be engaged in anything. For example, sometimes he washes the temple or the dishes. Whatever he does not let a single moment pass without deviating, or without devoting his activities to Krishna. Such action is in full samadhi. All right, now let's finish with verse 3 and 4 combined. So interesting. The Sanskrit is quite long for these two verses, but the English combined is really small. It looks just like one verse in English, but you can clearly tell that we're combining verses 3 and 4 together here. But those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, fixed, and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons, engaged in the welfare of all, at last achieve me. And I wrote about my note here is about a translation difference. And this one I think is a little bit significant here. The last sentence, Prabhupada wrote, at last achieve me. H.D. Goswami wrote, achieve me alone. And that was a little unclear. Does that mean they achieve Krishna, but they're all alone and they don't bring their friends with them? Or does that mean they achieve Krishna, but no other impersonalists, no other personalists too? They're also not achieving Krishna either. It's a little bit unclear, but excuse me. But I don't know how I burped if I didn't eat anything today. That was strange. Or drink. I didn't drink water either. I'm building up energy in here, I guess. It's like a throat chakra thing, I guess. Anyway. at last achieve me. And then in the purport, Prabhupada does expand on that a little bit. The point here that Krishna is making is that all roads lead to Krishna. All roads end to Krishna, the absolute truth, the ultimate end. Of course, that's the end. But if you're doing it the impersonalist way, especially in the Kali Yuga, you are in for some serious hard work. If you even make it there. I mean, it's just very, very difficult work. And it will work. And you will get Krishna at last. At last, you will get Krishna. Really short purport here. It's making me a little sad. I like the order in which he, Prabhupada writes in the second paragraph here, of a very natural and beautiful and effective way to realize Sri Krishna. First, you perceive the super soul within, and you will probably want to cease the sensual activities, seeing, hearing, tasting, working, etc. Then one comes to understand the Supreme Soul is present everywhere. And after you realize that, then you're friend to everyone. And you see man and animal as the same. But for the common man, this method of impersonal realization is very difficult. This is actually exactly what happened to me. But so funny. I was actually trying the personal method because I only knew this Bhagavad Gita here. Well, not the unedited version. I had the different one. I had the orange one. But anyway, all the principles are the same. But I was fully on that personal path. But it just so happened that I didn't get Krishna. I got the super soul incarnation, avatar, whatever, Paramatma. And then after that, I saw it extended everywhere. And that didn't last that long. I think I stayed in that kind of samadhi, if you want to call it, for just about 1 month. It was like 4 days that were crazy intense, and I could not function because I was just too utterly connected to everything that wasn't in this body. And then, like, after 1 month, it started to linger. And finally, now I've fully fallen down to where I am now, where I do not see the super soul in all beings. But I don't not see him either. The problem is humans. When I meet humans, I'm very human with them. I treat one human as this is like the Western Christian, not just Christian, but like Italian Renaissance genetics, especially, that I have in me, that I can be super individualistic by default. And I try to be as respectful as possible, even in the name of Jiva and Paramatma, that when someone uses their free will to make a choice that I think is really stupid, for instance, or evil, I still respect their free will that made that choice. And I might, still tell them, oh, that was bad, don't do that, whatever. But, I just try to do it from the place of just respecting that individual's human free will, not the free will at the level of Atma. That's a deeper, more subtle free will that I don't perceive that much. Sometimes I would like to. Most of the time, actually, I would like to. We'll see if I get there. All right, we made it 30 minutes long. And time for me to break this fast. Jai Shri Nishingadev. Jai Shri Nishingadev. Jai Shri Nishingadev. Jai Shri Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jai Shri Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis everywhere. Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Ciao.